Hey everyone, it's Jody from This Day, also joined by some other familiar voices.
Hi, it's Niki.
Hey there, it's Kellie.
As listeners have hopefully heard by now, we are halfway through our fall fundraiser for Radiotopia, which is our network of independent podcasts.
And look, one of the things that we love about doing the fundraiser is hearing from people as they support Radiotopia and finding out why you are supporting us. I mean, it means so much when we hear from you. There's actually this Slack channel where when donations and comments come in, we can see it, and I just love seeing it roll by. It's not just an ego boost to see people say nice things about us, but it's also like a real reminder of what we're in it for.
Yeah, it's really sweet. Like this comment from Chadwick, he says, I love the This Day podcast. Fantastic, educational, and fun. Oh, thank you, Chadwick.
Now, is that it? Fantastic, educational, and fun? Is that basically the only three things that matter? And is that the order? Is that the right order?
I think it's the right order. Well, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna second guess Chadwick. I also love this one from Jared because it gets at, like, why give? This is what he wrote. What got me to donate was the idea of donating to many of my favorite podcasts, and that I might be contributing to a show that doesn't even exist yet, that might become one of my favorites. Keep up the good work.
Love that.
That's very nice. Yeah, and that's true. You are investing in Radiotopia as a whole. I will also say that Jared, who wrote that in, he wrote favorite twice with a U in there, which makes me think that he's writing from overseas. So shout out to all the overseas listeners and members of Radiotopia. But look, as Jared pointed out, donating is a vote of confidence in a business model and an ethos of collective independent creators, which, as I think you know, listeners, is very, very rare and in short supply these days.
And as of this recording, we are about halfway to our goal of 1,500 donors before December 31st. So if this day has meant something to you this year, please make your tax-deductible donation today, right on our website at thisdaypod.com. Your donation is split among all the creators in this network, so everyone really gets to benefit.
Yeah, and every gift helps get us closer to our goal. So visit us at thisdaypod.com, and thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, folks, we are reaching the end of the year, which means that if you are anything like me, you might be letting the spending go a little bit. Between holiday shopping and travel and parties and end-of-year donations, it can be easy to lose track of how much you're spending, what you're spending it on, and the overall state of your financial picture. Well, if you want to keep your finances under control this holiday season, you need to be using Monarch. Rated Wall Street Journal's best budgeting app of 2025, Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean interface on your laptop or your phone. I've been using Monarch for a few months now, and for the first time in maybe ever, I feel like I have a real sense of how the money in my life is flowing, which, as I head into a new year, is going to really help me make some smart choices. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code THISDAY at monarch.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code THISDAY.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Hey everyone, a quick note before we get into this episode. We recorded this conversation about the TV show All in the Family about a week ago. Now, one of the stars of All in the Family was the actor and then director Rob Reiner. His portrayal of Mike in All in the Family was kind of his first big role. As you've likely seen if you're following the news, Rob Reiner died this week alongside his wife, murdered. A really tragic, heartbreaking story. We're going to still run this episode about All in the Family, of course. I didn't want to run it without some acknowledgement of the latest development. All right, here it is. Take a listen. Hello and welcome to This Day, a history show from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. This day, late 1971, heading into 1972, the biggest television show in America is an absolute force, both of entertainment and of politics. The show is All in the Family, one of the most influential sitcoms of all time. It's a family comedy, but it is one that dove right into the political fray of the time, with Archie Bunker and Edith Bunker representing two ends, in a way, of the political spectrum. The show had it all: blue collar, white collar, civil rights, backlash to civil rights, gender politics, lots more. Let me read for you the disclaimer that the network put before the program in that first season, which kind of says it all. It read, "The program you are about to see is All in the Family. It seeks to throw a humorous spotlight on our frailties, prejudices, and concerns. By making them a source of laughter, we hope to show in a mature fashion just how absurd they are." Quite the thing to see right before your evening network sitcom. And the character most willing to touch the third rail of politics was, of course, Archie Bunker. And there is a newish book called Archie Bunker for President: How One Television Show Remade American Politics. And the author is Oscar Winberg, a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Turku in Finland. And Oscar is with us now to discuss. Hello, Oscar. Thanks for coming on.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
And here with us, as always, is Nicole Hammer of Vanderbilt and Kellie Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
Oscar, you are at Turku, the University of Turku, which is in Finland, but you are Swedish, and you were telling us right before we started taping about how to actually pronounce your last name, which is spelled Winberg, which I would say Winberg. Then I moved to Winberg, and that still is not anywhere close, apparently, right?
Without having this sort of get into a long history conversation of Finland, I'm actually Finnish, but my native tongue is Swedish. It's a minority of around 6% of Finns speak Swedish. In Swedish it would be Vinberg, which is...
Buddy.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Buddy.
What does it mean?
Yeah. So a literal translation would be Wine Mountain, which, I'm not saying I'm against it.
Who doesn't want a mountain of wine? I mean, I know.
This
Yeah,
time of
it's
year,
a-
Wine Mountain
it's a
sounds
great one.
amazing.
And whatever sort of Nordic equivalent of our show should dive into the Swedish population of Finland. But we are an American history show, and you are here to talk about Archie Bunker. And actually, let me frame a little bit of the larger sort of political and social strains that go into especially the character of Archie Bunker. We've done an episode on this show about the so-called Hard Hat Riots, which were these riots just a year before All in the Family premiered in New York City, where a kind of working class, right-wing sort of civil rights backlash politics sort of emerged onto the scene, both as a political force, pro-Nixon, but also as a kind of, I would say, sort of cultural force. And can you just trace sort of like how that bursts onto the scene and then ends up sort of manifesting itself in many ways in this character of Archie Bunker?
Right. Well, so Archie is the quintessential hard hat. And that's also how Nixon and his aides identify him in conversations in the White House. They talk about him as a hard hat, meaning a symbol for what Nixon wants the silent majority to be. These sort of white ethnic working class men, especially, who have been the backbone of the New Deal coalition for decades, but are now sort of with a backlash against civil rights, and also in terms of anti-war politics of students sort of finding themselves alienated from the Democratic Party.
Oscar, who would Archie Bunker have voted for in 1968?
Archie Bunker didn't vote in 1968 because he's not a really good citizen in the sense of getting involved. But I mean, in 68, he might have still voted the Democratic Party line. But for 72, we're talking Nixon, although it gets more complicated when we're starting to sort of pull at the character and the actor Carol O'Connor and how that conversation actually made its way into the real life 72 election.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the candidate that doesn't come up there in 68 and 72 is George Wallace. And I think we often think of Archie Bunker, or like you mentioned that Richard Nixon talks about the hard hat voter, right? The hard hat voter is somebody who was enticed by George Wallace and his racist Democratic campaign in 68. And Nixon is really going after that voter in 72. And it takes the form of the hard hat. And the reason that I mention that is I just think as Jody was saying, like, Archie Bunker is such a fascinating cultural political character, and that mix of culture and politics, especially among white working class male voters, is so interesting in this period.
Yeah. And I mean, there's an episode where Sammy Davis Jr., the actual Sammy Davis Jr., appears in the Bunker household. And so the next door neighbor, Lionel Jefferson, who then obviously is on the Jeffersons, he sort of has a conversation about Archie with Sammy, trying to explain, saying that he's not really a bad guy, like he wouldn't burn a cross on your lawn. And then Sammy hits back with like, no, but if he saw it burning, he might as well toast a marshmallow on it. So, there is that racial tension. Might be a George Wallace voter, but also finding definitely a place in 72 within the Nixon coalition.
Yeah, I remember seeing that episode with Sammy Davis Jr. on there, and it's probably one of the most popular episodes, I feel like, because they do touch the third rail, and especially when it comes to race and racism. But it's interesting because Archie Bunker also has this, and I hate to say it because it feels so dismissive of like the real violence of racism, but this sort of lovable racist character where people understand that he is racist and at the same time like him. And so it makes it sort of difficult to tease out like who he is and also what he does.
Yeah, and these are definitely sort of the earliest conversations outside of the television pages are about this idea of a lovable bigot, and especially because Laura Hobson, the writer, the author of A Gentleman's Agreement, for example, writes this big expose in the New York Times about all the family, saying that this is actually really harmful, and this sort of bigotry, the satire is not connecting, and this will have bad consequences. And so Norman Lear then writes back and says that, a person can be both a bigot and lovable because his father was that. And that's sort of the key dynamic is for Norman Lear, the producer and creator of the show, he saw his own relationship to his father and Archie's relationship to Mike, his son-in-law. And that's why the character is imbued with so much love and lovability because the producer had this sort of, it's almost a love letter to his father, who he understands was in many ways not a good guy, but still was his father, who he held dear, of course.
Oscar, I wonder if, because the show has been off the air for about 50 years or so, if you could actually just take us back. I mean, you've mentioned that Norman Lear models Archie Bunker off of his father, but like, who is Archie Bunker? Where does he live? Who is Mike? Who are all of these people who populate this world that Archie Bunker enters American households through?
Sure. So if you just come across like any clip of All in the Family, you will see that in certain ways it's a very traditional domestic sitcom. So there is this middle-aged couple, Archie and Edith Bunker, who live in a working class neighborhood in Queens. Archie works at a loading dock, and Edith is a homemaker, and with them are their daughter Gloria and her husband Mike, who is studying sociology at college. So they stay with the parents-in-law during his years at university. So this all looks and sounds sort of like a normal setup for any sitcom. But what makes it really different, and especially in 1970s television world, is that then they add to this concoction, they add sort of reality. And reality can take many different forms. So, for example, it's the first show where you hear the sound of a flushing toilet. But it's also one of the first shows to actually talk about issues such as, residential segregation, redlining, abortion, contraceptions, Watergate, inflation, all of these things that are a part of the everyday experience of people at this point. And it's a very deliberate strategy. So it's based on a British show called Till Death Us Do Part. And when Norman Lear and his production partner Bud Yorkin takes it to the US, they sort of explicitly tell the writers, you need to take real-life stories into the writing rooms. So they, for example, provide them with newspapers in the writer rooms and says, like, you now have permission to tell all these stories that the networks used to censor over the years. Because much of the writers early on, they are veterans of television. They are the people who wrote for I Love Lucy and Benny, Jack Benny, Bob Hope, your show of shows with Sid Caesar. So it's really the first time they're allowed to deal with reality on network television in a consistent way.
We've mentioned a couple times, the idea, and on the show we touch on it all the time, the idea of the silent majority that Nixon is speaking to, and I think Archie represents. One of the kind of catch-22s of a silent majority is you don't really know how big it actually is. And I'm curious, the makers of the show, did they wrestle at all with the fact that, like, okay, we're giving voice to something that is clearly out there, but was there a chance, or did they think about whether maybe they were giving it an outsized voice by making one of their main characters kind of the avatar for this kind of thinking?
Absolutely. So there are a lot of conversations in the writer's room about what can we do, what stories can we tell, how should we do this, and especially sort of the very outspoken rule is that whenever Archie sort of demeans somebody, there has to be clapback from other characters. And one of the things they do to sort of signal that Archie is in the wrong is both sort of these classic malapropisms to signal that this is not a smart character, but also the ways you can do on a sitcom with a laugh track and reaction shots and close-ups to sort of show that he's constantly on the losing side of these arguments, and his own logic is always this convoluted fool's argument in the end. Now that doesn't mean that necessarily everybody's getting the satire. So the other thing that I think is sort of has become forgotten is how much they do outside of prime time to make clear that this is actually a loser. Archie is a loser, and he's not happy with his life. So if you look at, for example, like appearances on Johnny Carson, Carroll O'Connor, the actor who plays Archie, is very open about this. He says this is not a happy guy, and he's not happy because he's sort of standing across history yelling stop when the world is changing. And not only that, but the production offices, what I found in Norman Lear's papers is that a lot of pastors, ministers, priests were preaching about Archie, using him in their sermons. So you have all of these conversations. You have school teachers reaching out for scripts of episodes to deal with these sort of subjects in class and talk about how we should understand All in the Family. So it's definitely not existing in a vacuum. And again, there's still people who are not getting it. Carroll O'Connor, the actor, talked about how sometimes people come up to him and say, sort of, right on, Archie, you're telling it like it is. And he always found that really uncomfortable. But there are these sort of support structures to make it clearer how you should understand Archie and the satire of the show.
Yeah, I was curious, you said ministers and teachers, are they using Archie Bunker as a cautionary tale? I mean, this is a like, hey, don't be this guy kind of moment. And why do some people take him seriously and appreciate what he's doing? Is it because they also don't see a lot of characters like him on TV?
So definitely the sort of the sermons are about this is a cautionary tale, or like Archie is telling us how not to connect with our fellow citizens. And why aren't people getting it? I think some people might not want to get it. They like hearing somebody use all kinds of slurs and sort of throw them out there. The curious thing is, though, that the people who wrote in to the station or the network or the production company, even when they sort of liked Archie's politics, they still recognized that he was made a fool on the show. So you have all of these sort of letters full with slurs against the Jewish producers that are saying Archie should be a great guy and you're making him out to be bad. And that's the problem. And so this conversation about how are people understanding this? Is it resonating? That is not only an academic conversation, but a real life thing that even moves into the White House, where President Nixon after initially hating the show, becomes convinced that this is working to his benefit because people are liking this representative of the silent majority.
Wow.
I think that complex reaction is really important because in some ways it plays into the hands of the silent majority and Richard Nixon. On the one hand, there aren't that many working class families depicted on television in this time. I think the stat was something like 11% of sitcoms have working class people at the center of them. And so Archie Bunker definitely represents, at a class level, like a significant percentage of Americans who probably are underrepresented. And he also captures a kind of realism, as you were talking about, that you don't see on television. He uses a lot of slurs. He gets into these political debates with his son-in-law who represents the left and, fights against the war and talks about how bad Nixon is. And so people who identify as consciously as part of the silent majority look at Bunker and they're like, yeah, I want to be the person arguing with Mike and making all of these points. And then when he's undercut by Edith and the other characters, I think that they can then project onto that, oh, right, liberal Hollywood, liberal media are against us. And so it is this kind of complex package of lovable Archie Bunker in their eyes, and also he's being mistreated by the liberal media, which they feel as well, and of course Nixon feels as well. And so even in their eyes flawed representation, he gets to be a hero again because he's a member of the oppressed white working class.
And it's sort of this classical thing where Nixon at first is not at all, he sees All in the Family because the ball game he's about to watch is rained out, and he's shocked at what he sees, and he rants and he raves to his aides about this show. But then, because he has close connections in Hollywood, through them he becomes convinced that this satire isn't working, it's backfiring. And at that point, as we head into the 1972 election, Nixon is actually trying to get the endorsement of Archie Bunker. So again, you have this idea that if it's working for me, I'll take it, and if it's not, then I'll condemn it and sort of see it as representative of this liberal media establishment.
Hello, this is Matt from the Explorers Podcast. I want to invite you to join me on the voyages and journeys of the most famous explorers in the history of the world. These are the thrilling and captivating stories of Magellan, Shackleton, Lewis and Clark, and so many other famous and not so famous adventurers from throughout history. Go to explorerspodcast.com or just look us up on your podcast app. That's the Explorers Podcast.
All right, folks, I think we might be starting to get into holiday gift-giving panic mode. The calendar is ticking by, you're staring at that list and can't think of what to get people. Well, I've got a tip for you. When it comes to holiday gifts, I always turn to beautiful, timeless pieces of clothing and accessories that I know the person I'm giving it to will wear for years. And that is why I've been turning to Quince. I picked up a Mongolian cashmere sweater there for my sister. I mean, who doesn't love a nice new sweater? Over in the accessories section, I grabbed a really classy leather travel pouch set for a friend of mine, $60. Please don't tell them, by the way. It's a surprise. And of course, as I'm cruising around, I can't help but pick up a new pair of wool pants for myself. The items are incredible. They're luxury. They're affordable. Find gifts so good that you will want to keep them with Quince. Go to quince.com/thisday for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/thisday to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/thisday. So we are starting to get into the thick of the holiday season, and while I love the holidays, I also know that it's a really tricky time to try and eat healthy. The sweets, the baked goods, the holiday parties, the family dinners. I have a theory that the window for bad eating actually goes from Halloween through to the Super Bowl or maybe even Valentine's Day. It can just be a really tough stretch. Which is why, when I have a chance to actually cook at home for myself and my family, I really want something healthy, seasonal, full of vegetables and great flavors. And HelloFresh does the trick. They are the #1 meal kit in America, making home cooking easier with chef-crafted recipes and fresh ingredients delivered straight to your door. And they've recently taken things to the next level. doubling their menu, packing it with healthy, high-protein recipes from all over the globe. If you cook at home with HelloFresh, you just might forget that you ate all that junk at those last 5 holiday parties. The best way to cook just got better. Go to HelloFresh.com/thisday10FM now to get 10 free meals and a free item for life, 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. Once again, that's HelloFresh.com/thisday10FM to get 10 free meals and a free item for life. In terms of how Archie is framed and Norman Lear's intentions here, I mean, I want to ask you actually about empathy because let's go back actually to this, which I find just really remarkable, this title card that goes up before the program that says, "The program you're about to see is All in the Family. It seeks to throw a humorous spotlight on our frailties, prejudices, and concerns. By making them a source of laughter, we hope to show in a mature fashion just how absurd they are." That is nuanced and I think, a generous statement, but there is not in there something like, we want to show the humanity of all of our characters. We want to build empathy for people even when we disagree with them. I mean, it lands pretty firmly on we are making fun of these characters. Right. And so I'm curious what you think of that. And then moreover, did that still play into it? Were there people who maybe didn't disagree with Archie, but still watched him and thought to themselves, well, gosh, I can see where people like this form their politics. I mean, where does empathy fit into this whole equation?
Well, so that warning disclaimer, that's from the legal department at CBS. Wow. It has nothing to do with the production.
It feels like such a creative statement. It's amazing that's a legal disclaimer. Wow.
It does. So that's definitely not something that Norman Lear and the other producers would underwrite. But the question of empathy, that's pretty central to this show because, again, it's based on a British show and the main character there is not a lovable bigot. He's just a bigot and an abrasive and sort of ugly character. And of course, on US television, the structures are a little bit different. You need 24 episodes a season, and you want it to run for as long as possible because that's how you make money. So they sort of soften Archie from just the business structure forces them to soften Archie, but Norman Lear's relationship to his own father also plays into this, and sort of this idea that we should understand the person and not just see Archie as this representative of a hard hat. And this comes in early on, like first season episodes. There's an episode where Gloria gets pregnant, and Archie at first is very upset about this, and then he sort of realizes that, no, actually I'm going to be a grandfather, this is great, comes home with this big teddy bear only to hear that she has miscarried. And so then there's this scene with him at her bedside, and he can't find himself to sort of say I love you to his own daughter. But so she puts it into words and says that what you want to say is you love me, I love you too, and so forth. Another episode early on is about him worrying about losing his job and talking about how when his father lost his job during the Great Depression, how that sort of took away from his whole identity as breadwinner of the family, and how much Archie worries about his family losing respect for him if he's not the breadwinner. So there are these deliberate efforts to sort of provide nuance to the character and see him as a three-dimensional person worthy of empathy, even though he's also this very bigoted and abrasive character.
I find that really helpful, Oscar, because I think, Jody, what I hear in that disclaimer that you don't necessarily hear today is that empathy can coincide with believing that a person is wrong. That empathy doesn't require you to withhold judgment about values. And I think sometimes that falls out. Like the conversation is either no empathy, only values, or it's all empathy, no values. And this seems to balance those two in a way that feels less common today.
Yeah. The popularity of the show, too. I mean, for a show that's doing a lot on TV that we've never seen before. It stays in the ratings. I mean, it's the #1 show on the Nielsen ratings for 5 years. In its 9th year run, it's got 55 Emmy nominations. It wins 22 of them. Like, I mean, most shows could only dream to have 9 seasons, let alone still be getting Emmy nominations during that 9th season. TV has changed so much. But I wonder, like, I don't know, when I think of Archie Bunker, I also think of sort of like his reincarnations, like where we also see versions of him in TV. Like, I think about how much in my, like, as I'm growing up and thinking about like how we see working class characters more. Like, I think about even someone like Homer Simpson, or I think about is it Ted Bundy of
Married with Children,
Married with Children.
Roseanne Barr.
Yeah, Roseanne. I mean, you start to see maybe portions of this character a little bit more. But then also, I don't know, when you were talking earlier, I was like, oh gosh, I could see like why, like he would be very MAGA today. Like this would be, you could draw a straight line from like, you know, the Archie Bunker of then to the MAGA, you know, father of today.
Well, I mean, that's also something that Rob Reiner, who plays Mike, and is obviously then becomes a very successful director and sort of political activist. But he says very explicitly in 2018, I think, that we've got Archie Bunker in the White House now with Donald Trump being there. And it's not just a liberal talking point, because Steve Bannon also identifies Donald Trump as sort of an Archie Bunker-like character, which is weird because, again, Archie is this working stiff from
He's
Queens.
not a billionaire.
But that's the trick of Donald Trump, right? I mean, yeah.
That's the trick, yeah.
Exactly. And I think part of it is sort of that trick that George Wallace also used very efficiently of like using outrageous language, using insults to sort of show that you're not part of the establishment, you're not playing by the same rules as others. And that's sort of what Archie does, and that's also what right-wing media figures like Rush Limbaugh do, and that's why sometimes you find like these references in the New York Times or other places where people call Rush Limbaugh the Archie Bunker of the 90s. So you sort of have this straight line that you can connect this television character in the 1970s to what's happening at the moment in U.S. politics as well.
Can we talk about, obviously, you know, there's Archie Bunkers in U.S. politics, but also I'm curious, you know, if you see Archie Bunkers, to Kellie's point, on TV and in culture. I mean, this idea of the lovable bigot. I mean, if you put a character on TV like this right now, I think a lot of reactions would be like, oh, you're giving oxygen, you're normalizing this kind of behavior and these kinds of ideas. Or people would say, well, you're being too frivolous about something that is deadly serious. I mean, my instinct is that a character, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't see many characters like this. And if a character like this was put on to popular media these days, it would largely get sort of like hounded from all sides.
I mean, there are some examples. Of course, the sort of reboot of Roseanne was an attempt, and very explicitly by the producers, was an attempt to have the conversations that Norman Lear was able to have with the audience in the 1970s. Of course, that sort of crashed and burned because of Roseanne's personal politics outside of prime time. The other sort of example, and actually a place where you, even in this moment of sort of elite institutions bending the knee to Donald Trump, you still see on television one iteration of Archie Bunker, which is Cartman on South Park.
Yeah.
And that's Trey Parker and Matt Stone explicitly say that when they created Cartman, it was an attempt to bring Archie Bunker back on the air, but it had to be done in the form of a little kid to sort of get that distance and avoid being sort of dragged into this political debate.
I want to throw a left field example in, because I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about the British origins of All in the Family, and that is Michael Scott from The Office.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Which is another import
Very
where
good.
it was like a terrible person in the British version, and they had to give him a heart in the American one. But especially in those early seasons, his anti-black, anti-gay, anti-woman politics, it never comes across as particularly mean-spirited. And that is kind of the trick of that show.
I mean, look, the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie kind of has some characters like this, but I think they're largely being mocked, you know? And even, funnily enough, I've found the Knives Out movies always have a kind of like MAGA or like tech bro. There's like some real kind of tropes in there. But again, those are always played for mostly to mock them. And I think, it's just a much trickier media environment right now to try and play the sort of mix of empathy and mocking and understanding while still sort of having your values in place. And maybe that is because
we're so polarized.
We're definitely so polarized, but also like that the release valve for this is not in culture, it's actually now in politics, And so politics is sort of checking all those boxes for us, and we don't need our TV shows to do it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would add that this is also a business decision, right?
Yeah.
So, Norman Lear in his late in life wanted to prove that All in the Family could still get on the air today. And so what he did was he teamed up with Jimmy Kimmel and other producers to sort of do these live remakes of the actual All in the Family scripts from back in the day. And, that's not to say it would have necessarily made it as a series, but it did for these one-off events. It did attract an audience.
And those were in the Trump era. Those were fairly recently, right?
Exactly. Yeah, in the Trump era. And so, the question is not necessarily how would the audience react so much as to how are the executives at the networks, how willing are they at the moment to take risks? And this is also predates, the current moment. If we recall in the first Trump administration, there were conversations, for example, about, episodes of Blackish dealing with Colin Kaepernick and the decision to kneel during football games getting censored and so forth, even though it was this really, really successful show. So it's not necessarily the audience, but more so the executives.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Yeah.
All right. Well, we will leave it there. There's so much more we could get into. And obviously, these are sort of cultural and political threads that we will continue to cover throughout next year in our America 250 series as well. But the book is Archie Bunker for President, How One Television Show Remade American Politics. The author is Oscar Winberg. Thank you so much for doing this, Oscar.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you as always.
Thank you, Jody.
And Kellie Carter-Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
American history lesson. You don't know nothing about Lady Liberty standing there in the harbor with her torch on high, screaming out to all the nations in the world, send me your poor, your deadbeats, your filthy. All of them come in here, and they're all free to live in their own separate sections, where they feel safe, and then bust your head if you go in there. That's what makes America great, buddy.
This Day is a proud member of Radiotopia, a network of independent, artist-produced podcasts. Don't forget to sign up for our America 250 Watch newsletter. Every Thursday, members get exclusive access to analysis and information about the upcoming semi-quincentennial, commentary from our team, and a list of fascinating things that happened that week throughout history. Join in, find out lots more at thisdaypod.com. You can also follow This Day Pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Jacob Feldman is our researcher. Brittany Brown is our editor. My name is Jody Avirgan. See you soon.
Radiotopia.